ANC delegates will find out who else has made it onto the North West Provincial Executive when they reassemble later on this morning. The conference is entering its final day, and it's been a long and rocky road with court interdicts brought on by disgruntled party members in the province. Now, they want to nullify the conference and its outcomes, including the election of the top 5 leaders 2 weeks ago. Our reporter Moloko Moloto has been following this story, and I understand that you've had very little sleep at that, Moloko. But what is set to get underway today as we wrap up the part 2 of this conference proceedings?
Good morning, Rofiwa. That's very correct. We really did not sleep enough, but of course that is the nature of such conference or meetings of the ANC. Of course, the delegates had been here overnight, and they, started a little bit late yesterday. They were meant to start at 1 o'clock, and I think they started just after 3 p.m. And the work that they have done so far was primarily to receive the various reports. For instance, the finance report, the organizational report, which painted a very interesting picture, on actually frightening to some extent, considering that they, as the ANC, acknowledge that actually some of their branches are led by people who were at some point cash-in-transit heists, convicts, robbers. And they are saying that in some municipalities, they are having to deal with a procurement mafia, people who are forcing municipal officials so that they can appoint them onto contracts and give them tenders. So it's a very frightening state of affairs. For instance, in some regions, they say that there are gangsters, such as they call themselves Marashia, others call themselves Chabarefete, which basically means make a way for us. Some of the names, Rofiwa, out of respect of our viewers, I would not even be able to mention the names of those rival gang groups. And these are groups that are said to be terrorizing ANC members, not only in ANC branch meetings, where we heard the newly elected chairperson of the ANC in this province, Ntate Maloi, saying in some meetings these people bring dangerous weapons. But according to the organizational report, they even, if they disagree with you, would come to your house to beat you up, or even in some instances torch houses of those people they disagree with. So you kind of like get a sense that it's actually gangsters' paradise, and the new leaders acknowledging that it's going to be a tall order for them, firstly to rein in and also kind of like bring unity and renewal within the structures of the ANC.
It sounds like a really difficult task, just given what you've described to us, Moloko. And I heard some of the conversations that you were having with delegates earlier, saying that this is the conference that's going to bring unity within the party in the province and possibly broadly. But that seems quite difficult to accomplish, not only because the conference in the Northwest in particular has taken this long to get to this point, but also the criminality that exists within the party that unfortunately has gone without accountability.
It is definitely not going to be a small feat to unite these warring factions in this province, because factions are really institutionalized. You would recall that the deputy president of the ANC, David Mabuza, when he opened this ongoing conference 2 weeks back, he actually warned that if the ANC is not going to mend its ways, if as comrades they are not going to resolve their issues, they actually are threatening even the existence of the African National Congress. But you would recall, Rofiwa, that the Provincial Executive Committee in this province was disbanded sometime in 2018. It was chaired by Supra Mahuma Pelo at the time, and we later saw that he actually got fired as premier following riots that were taking place, in particular in the provincial capital, Mafikeng. Now, you have a situation wherein after the disbanding of that particular PEC, you then had the ANC appointing a provincial task team. And those who were aggrieved by that decision of the ANC NEC, they headed to court in Johannesburg, and the court ruled in their favor and said that the National Executive Committee was wrong when it disbanded the PEC, and it even ordered that the PTT that they appointed had to be disbanded, and the ANC then appointed the provincial interim structure in line with their constitution as the party. And that interim structure had been in place for years, Rofiwa, and they even exceeded their stay. And coming into this conference, we saw those members of the interim structure wanting to presiding over this conference, and some unhappy members going to court to say, no, in terms of the ANC constitution, you can't, and that they won in court, forcing the ANC to dissolve that particular interim structure. So even on Thursday last week, we saw people who were unhappy with outcomes of the meeting that happened 2 weeks back that elected the top 5 going to court wanting to dissolve this. So the members of the ANC in this province are highly litigious. I mean, as we speak, now they have elevated their grievance to the Constitutional Court. They want this province to be dissolved. So the issue of unity and renewal, that is what the leaders are saying. But the fact of the matter is that you have people who are saying unity has to happen on the basis of good principles. They still don't believe that this conference was constituted lawfully. They believe that there are so many irregularities. So it's going to be a tall order, not only for the leaders, but also for the rank and file in this province to come together and unite.
Yesterday, Moloko, we had questions around who will be closing off the conference. You've just mentioned that Deputy President Didi Mabuza was the one who opened the official proceedings, and it was indicated that the logistics are still being finalized by Pule Mabe. Is there a sense, is President Ramaphosa going to be coming through and closing the conference, or is it perhaps going to be, I've just been told that he's in Angola, so it's obviously not going to be a thing, although Pule Mabe did indicate that if he did, it might be a virtual closing. Apart from that, Moloko, let's talk about the sense of the camp that the Northwest belongs to ahead of the December conference. Who are they supporting to be the next president of the party?
Well, it's very difficult to tell, Rofiwa. We can only speculate at this point in time, but when you read the reports that were presented behind closed doors, one thing that they seem to agree on, I mean, this provincial leaders as well as President Cyril Ramaphosa, is that the step-aside rule has to continue. So at least on that score, they agree. So you can say that possibly they have the same thinking, because you recall that there are some provinces that have said that the step-aside rule must be scrapped. But those who prepared these reports for this conference are saying that it must stay. However, we must point out that this conference will possibly take a different decision by the end of it, because they still have to go and discuss policy issues. They also, before they disperse, will have to pronounce on declarations and policy decisions. But at least up to now, what we know as contained in their documents that were presented before in plenary, albeit in closed session, they are saying it must actually continue. So what we know is that as of now, as you can see in this particular plenary, it's totally empty. The delegates actually have been voting overnight, and when I left this place myself at around 2:10, voting in the morning, the voting was still going on, and we are told that they actually are now done with voting. The counting is underway. I'm told that they are likely to reassemble at around 11 o'clock this morning, and I suppose for them the important thing would be the people who would have made it onto the list of 30 additional members. Interestingly, Rofiwa, the Premier of the province, Mr. Bushi Maape, you would recall that he lost the contest for the chairperson position to Nonomaloi 2 weeks back. Now, automatically, because he was among the people who contested for the top 5 positions in terms of the ANC processes and rules, he automatically became a nominee for the additionals, so he had to be voted in, but he declined that nomination to be an additional member of the PEC. So that basically says he would not be structured, and the question, therefore, is what will happen to him? Is he going to be a lame duck premier, a premier without, who doesn't belong to any structure? Unlike in KZN, where we say Zigalala, accepting, wanting to actually be elected into the additionals, unfortunately not making it. And it was not a surprise when he accepted a lower position of MEC. I'm not too sure if in this case Premier Maape will accept that. So some people are saying his days really are numbered, but the ANC leaders here are saying they are not in the game of purging. They still have faith in him. But of course, some of the people who are also rejected here, for instance, when the nominations were made, their names were called out. For instance, Mr. Phili Mapulani, who is the Deputy Minister of Communications. The delegates were booing. You can tell that he's surely not going to make it. The likes of Kenny Morolong, who was spokesperson of the ANC here, he definitely will not make it, given the sentiment that was here. So the likes of China Dodobu, who is chairperson of Parliament's Select Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, the delegates surely did not like him. It would be a miracle if he makes it onto the additionals. So chances are they are going to vote. They voted according to slates, and the new chairperson is saying, look, this is democracy in practice. Whoever people chose, they have a right to choose whichever way they did.
And final thought from you, Moloko Moloto. Was there an acknowledgement that 2024 is going to be a difficult election period for the ANC, and for the first time, given the polls that are coming through from various institutions, the ANC may find itself ruling in a coalition national government?
Well, they acknowledge the difficulties that are in this particular province. The state of affairs in municipalities, it's a mess, Rofiwa. And to say it's a mess actually is an understatement. Even them as the leaders, they say, look, we have a problem. In the chairperson's report, they are saying that actually the current crop of councillors are actually a shame. That is the word they are using. They are saying they are worse. Their failures are the worst as compared to all the councillors they have had since the dawn of local government in 1996. And this is because in some municipalities, you have councillors who really are simply defying instructions given to them by the provincial leaders. Several municipalities here actually are hanging. Previously, they were governed by the ANC, and of course, in some instances, the ANC, in fact, all of them, even those that are hanging, are governed by the ANC in the form of coalitions. But they are very fluid. For instance, even in one municipality, I think it's headquartered in Lichtenberg, they are basically saying, actually there you have 2 mayors. You have 2 chief whips, you have 2 speakers, you have 2 municipal managers, governed by the ANC, by the way. And in Madibeng, for instance, they are also talking about the factions that are there. For instance, now there's a motion of no confidence, possibly next week, against the ANC mayor. The leaders are saying they have a problem with ANC councillors who are voting, supporting motions brought by opposition. And they basically are saying, if we have to fire these ANC councillors and contest in the by-elections, that's what they say they are going to do. They definitely acknowledge the fact that the ANC has been losing electoral support in the province. That they certainly acknowledge. And of course, this province, like other provinces such as the Eastern Cape, Limpopo, for instance, and Mpumalanga, they have been very supportive of the ANC. Deputy President David Mabuza, when he opened this conference, he said the people of South Africa are pinning their hopes on the ANC, but for a better life for all, but they continue to be disappointed.
Continue to be disappointed indeed. Moloko Moloto, we'll catch up with you a little bit later on as those proceedings to end off the conference get underway.